Okay, I think we are live on Facebook on the Talented People page. So welcome along, everyone. It's nice to be with you on a Wednesday lunchtime. I haven't eaten yet, and I'm feeling a bit regretful of that now. So hopefully my stomach won't be churning while we're chatting. But this is a live session, and we have some amazing people willing to share their experiences of working in this wonderful and frustrating industry at times with us today. And as you will know from our promos, it's all about making mistakes. So just while we let a few people join, I will just tell you a bit about us in case you've never seen one of these before and what we do. So I'm Kimberly and I run Talented People with my partner Rosie. We are a little team of talent managers who work across all indies and other companies and broadcasters, big and small, unscripted, factual, entertainment, development, all sorts of roles. And we help hook up our wonderful community of freelancers to brilliant jobs with those companies or platforms in TV and digital, and for permanent contracts and short contracts. So we are the middle people and lots of sort of puppet string holders for lots of really cool projects in content making. So it's lovely to have you along here. I hope we have your CV if you are a candidate. If not, find our website and click the send your CV button. But yes, these Facebook Live sessions, why do we run them? So we approximately once a month now. We did a lot last year during the pandemic, which you can find on our website and watch them through. We feel really strongly about our community of people because you guys are the reason that we run our company and the reason why we love what we do. There's not a lot of support or training or kind of togetherness in TV, and it's so sort of detached. You can move around from job to job, people to people, have stressful projects, have really smooth running projects, but not many people talk about stuff like this in the open forum, and that's what we aim to do this for, because we really care about you and we want to find you guys proper nice contracts and people to work with. So yes, this session is all about making mistakes and what happens on a shoot or in your production office when the proverbial shit hits the fan and you need to talk about it but aren't sure how to talk about it or how to deal with it. So I'm going to introduce our guests now. We have Dan Howell, who is a shooting PD and whose brainchild this session actually was. So he's going to tell us that he makes mistakes all the time, basically. So prep yourself for that. There is the Cath Boggan, who's a shooting producer. You've also done some directing too, haven't you, Cath?
Yeah.
Yep. Welcome along.
Thanks.
Andrew Eastel, who is a creative director of Middle Child down in Brighton. Hello, hello, in your posh office. Very nice. Helen Landeau. Helen is a line producer currently at Rogan Productions. Hello, Helen. Woo. And the lovely Ruhi Hamid, who is there in her, I'm really intrigued by all your trinkets and pictures and stuff in the background. Ruhi is a shooting PD. She's done some brilliant projects recently. And David Vallance. Hello, David.
Hello.
David is a series editor and exec producer. Worked on a ton of different projects. So we've got a vast array of seniority, production, editorial, and yeah, we want to chat about the taboo subject of fucking. So Dan actually rang me, having been part of a session a long time ago with us about hospital, and we were just mulling over what things we'd like to talk about next. And Dan felt very much that sharing is important. So tell us what you think about this session, Dan, and why it came to you.
Okay, well, because I fuck up a lot, basically. No, we were talking about it, weren't we? And basically, we were talking about this with lots of our friends as well. And it just feels like whenever you're, well, most of the time you're on a project, you feel like you're the only one who's going through the things that you're going through. You feel like you're doing all of this for completely the first time, and and every set of things that you experience is like you're experiencing them for the first time. And it's very easy when, when you're on location or you're in the office or whatever, to feel like you just get very in it. And it's hard sometimes to kind of lift down and go, oh, actually, I have done this before. I do know what I'm doing, or this mistake that I've just made isn't the total end of the world. So I think we just wanted to do some sort of platform where hopefully people can watch it if they're on a shoot that's like a bit of a nightmare at the moment, or if they just finished a project or whatever, and just think, oh, there are other people who go through these similar things that I go through. And the big thing that I think a lot of us struggle with is that you see programs go out by people who are your mates or you've worked with or whatever, and they're fully formed, brilliantly polished programs that go out. And then lots of the sessions that you see on stuff like this are people going, yeah, it was great. We had all these great ideas and yada, yada. But and so you tend to think, oh, well, there's me sort of week 4 of my shoot going, oh my God, it's all a nightmare. And there's, loads of brilliant programs going out. You don't sort of, there's very limited opportunities to actually sit down in a group like this and go, well, what were all the sort of nightmare moments and the things that you had to overcome and the more difficult times mentally, emotionally to get to that point? So that's what we wanted to do today, basically.
Yeah, there's definitely an element of rose-tinted glasses, right? When you look back at projects and you go, oh, that was just like the best one ever. And, actually at the time it was awful. And there's a lot of discussion at the moment, isn't there, about mental health and bullying and lots of things being called out, which is all excellent. And actually I should put a trigger warning at the top that we may well talk about things that are related to mental health, and I will be giving details of places to go for support and help by the end of the session. So yeah, and also I just want to say thank you to all of you guys for being like bold enough and willing enough to come along and share. I'm going to start with you, Andrew, actually. So I remember when we've spoken to this about before, you mentioned something that does come up quite a lot called imposter syndrome. Talk to me about your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone has it, don't they? I mean, I certainly have it a lot. I was thinking about, after we spoke, Kimberly, about what I could sort of do to bring some sort of value to this session. And actually, as someone now that's lucky enough to be employing a lot of freelancers on productions that inevitably have problems because it's the nature of what we do. I don't think we're ever going to avoid that, and I don't think we should try to. Well, we should try to, but I don't think we should expect that that something won't happen. And I think a lot of the people that work for us have that imposter syndrome, and as we've said before, I've had it myself. I think it's only experience and time that possibly removes that a little bit. So the amount of people that you speak to that have had the same horror stories as you have, the people even that you greatly respect and assume are, have this perfect career where nothing's gone wrong, and then you find out that actually they struggle all the time. I think it's just being in the industry long enough to know that everybody else is in exactly the same boat, and I'm yet to have met anybody more senior than me or more junior than me that has said that they have this perfect career and they've done everything completely right the whole time. It's just nonsense. It's not the case. I absolutely agree with Dan. I noted it down earlier that we're too quick to judge other people on the final product, and actually behind the scenes we've got no idea how they got to that final product. The good thing is, generally speaking, 99.9% of the time, we do get to that final product. It does go out on telly and it does look amazing, and it probably makes everybody that worked on it, to us from the outside, look like they've done the perfect job, which is good. That's positive. We should all remember that. But actually, you should never assume that the route to getting there was sort of stress-free and there wasn't massive dramas on the way. I mean, we specialize in factual television. And by its very nature, you've got no idea what's going to happen. That's what's so great about it. It's probably why a lot of us do the job. But you can't therefore expect there not to be massive hurdles that come along the way. And also there aren't just 10 problems that go wrong in factual television that you can learn and be prepared for. There's new ones every time. And we do multiple returnable series, and every series there's new stuff that was completely unexpected that we've got to deal with. I think, and you can come back to me on this, but I think what probably is a good role for me in this discussion is actually to try and reassure people that are watching, certainly more junior people, that they're not going to come into an industry where everybody in a senior role or an exec level just kind of employs a load of freelancers and leaves them, hangs them out to dry on the production. If we're doing our job properly as people overseeing productions, then we need to make sure that no one gets overburdened. And I think I can talk more about it later, but I think there's things, really simple things that we do already and that other people should be doing that stop people feeling overwhelmed and overburdened, and not least being self-deprecating and explaining that this happens all the time and it's completely normal and it's the job.
There are good people up top, and I can vouch that that is like Andrew and middle child as well. So yeah, we'll definitely come back to that some more. Helen, I'm keen to hear from you straight away, because there's obviously been a lot of noise, rightly so, surrounding production management at the moment. Do you want to share with us how you feel about the industry and the way that we own or don't own mistakes?
Well, piggybacking from what Andrew said, actually, it's I think we've all have our battle scars amongst all of us, and nothing is perfect. And coming from factual and specialist factual, I'm of the ilk that I own my mistakes. We all cock up, and we're all human, and that's life. And despite that, you can try and plan for production as best as possible. As Andrew said, you can have stuff coming left field, you just don't see it coming. And so you're having to cope with that. I think from a production point of view of what's happening right now is that through the pandemic, a lot of people have left, and there's a lot of work out there, which is great. But a lot of us are also overburdened as well. And you're having to navigate that. I mean, at one stage I was looking after 4 projects, all at different stages, and there's some at pinch points as well. I've got a couple of projects that are all coming. I've got delivered 3 programs this month, and they're all coming to the end of their edits. And the broadcaster's like, I want it yesterday, and it's kind of like, oh no. And it's so sometimes, in terms of mental health, you do have to worry about that. But I think that from some of the projects that I've worked on in the past as well, we've cocked up, sitting there in a hot seat in front of the MD and the director of production. And it's kind of like you're going through line by line, and it's kind of squeaky bum time. And then you realize that you made a complete enough cock up on that schedule line. And I just said, listen, hands up, that was my fault, X, Y, and Z. And to my surprise, they were pretty supportive about it, actually, because there's no sense in lying, there's no sense in hiding it, just own it. And quite frankly, you'll probably be better off for it, because if you try and cover it and there's investigations and all roads lead back to you, it don't look good. And our currency is our reputation. But at the end of the day, it happens. I always say shit happens. It does. And we just have to just get on with it, find a solution, and just get over it and get on, really.
That's a fabulous point. And what you said then is
shit happens.
Shit happens. And also we're all human. And I do honestly think as you get older, you realize that actually there's in life in general, no one knows what they're doing. Like you always look at everyone else and think that they know what they're doing, and then you realize that actually you can make it up yourself and sound confident with it, or educated guess or trial and error, and that's okay, isn't it? Right?
Absolutely. Well, I mean, from what you're saying is that when you see that polished product and it goes out and you look at your program and you're thinking, man, that was hell, but we managed to get there. But I sometimes think that from some nightmare programs that I've worked on, not only is experience, but sometimes you gain a new skill. And I always try and take a positive from that. So no matter what nightmare that I've been on, sometimes I take a new skill and I take that forward. So you're always building on your experience. So it's kind of like if you go to another production and you come across something similar, then you'll say, you know what, don't do it that way. You do it this way. Trust me, I've learned the hard way. So I think that sometimes the bad experiences you can, you know, I'm a glass half full kind of person. So I always think that take that experience and pay it forward, and that builds into your experience.
Exactly. Can I just say about imposter syndrome and about what Helen's just been saying? You know, you do learn a new skill every time, and the temptation is to arrive on a project like Andrew was saying and think, oh my God, like, you know, the other PDs are way more experienced than me, or whatever. And it's like, actually, no, you have done this before. And you just, sometimes, you know, I really struggle with this, but you need to remember the bad things that you've done, which we'll talk about specific mistakes later, but you need to remember the bad things that you've done and how you got through them. But also you need to remember the good things that you've done on, you know, your last project and the one before that and the one before that, and just spend a moment when everything is, you know, you got 3 programs that you need to deliver at the same time, and just think, you know, actually, I have done this before. You know, you're not an imposter. The reason that you've been hired for the job is that you can do it. You know, and you know, that's what I try to remember, is to tell myself the good things that I've done in the past, and also the bad things that I've done in the past, and how they got better eventually.
Can I also add something there? I just want to say that in my experience, no matter what the cock up is, the thing to remember is there's always a way out. There's always a solution, and it depends how you cope with it. And that's what you've got to build up, is coping mechanisms, and knowing when, like you said, Helen, when to own up. And it's really, really important to own up to a cock up, because actually there's loads of people behind you who are there to kind of catch you and to help you find the right solutions. So, you know, I've got a very specific example that was a massive cock up that I nearly, you know, I was expecting to be fired, but there was a solution. So I think that's also really important to remember, that there's always a solution there. But the key to that is that you therefore have to communicate that you have fucked up, you know, and not have any shame about that. Because we are all human, and, you know, it's not always, like you say, unexpected things get thrown at you, that you could have planned everything. And, you know, all of us plan our shoots really carefully. But those unforeseen things that come at you, you know, from the side, you can't always sort of shield them. So you do end up messing up, but there's always a way out.
I think it's important from the, you know, the execs and the people running companies, that you create an environment where you're able to own up. Because I think that's where a lot of people probably face problems, where they do feel a little bit like they've been hung out to dry, and they feel like if they're owning up to something, whoever their superior person is, whether that's an SP, an exec, or a PD even, that they are admitting that they are an imposter, and they're going to get blamed for something, and it's going to be really, really negative on them. And then that becomes overwhelming. I think we purposely build teams on productions that encourage that environment. Like, we would never tolerate one person sort of ruling with an iron fist at any level, because the whole thing breaks down, and there'll be individuals then that suddenly feel massively under pressure with nowhere to talk to anyone about. And ultimately, the execs or the people running the company, the responsibility lies with them ultimately, and that's the way it should be. But unless that is clear and is filtered down, if you step too far away from them and let, you know, like I said, let people hang themselves out to dry, then they're going to really suffer, and that's terrifying, and it can be really overwhelming, and it does feel like, you know, the world's problems are on your shoulders if you're left alone to deal with it. So I think it's encouraging an environment where people can openly talk to each other, and they know they're not going to get, you know, chastised for it or anything like that. And it is just normal for these problems to happen, and probably no one's fault. And the blame game's a nightmare, because I see that all the time, and it is the most counterproductive thing when we have a show to make, to start thinking about whose fault it was that we got into this problem. I mean, invariably, it's probably nobody's fault, but that's for way down the line. If you want to assess, you know, how the series went, it's not going to help anyone at the time. So I think, yeah, it's creating an environment where people are able to talk to each other is really important. I think that probably doesn't happen on productions, on some productions sometimes.
Yeah, for sure. We're going to come to some specific examples of stuff so that you can all hear that you are not alone shortly. But just before we do that, David, someone's already commented, which is fantastic. And please do ask questions in the comments, or comment along. The freelancer fear thing is a big reason why people perhaps don't own up. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I think that's the massive thing. I mean, when I started in the industry a couple of years ago, there was a massive blame, fear culture that was really problematic, and I saw it improve. But I've now seen things often sort of go backwards, and I think the pandemic was also a lot to blame for. Certainly, a lot of freelancers feeling an increased fear that because there's less work, because there's more pressure, there's all the coronavirus pressures on top of everything else. The budgets are smaller and tighter. But I would say, so the two key things I think that you need to be aware of are that there are good mistakes and bad mistakes. A bad mistake is one that you make and you don't learn from, simple as that. And a good mistake is one that you make and you do learn from. So it's sort of following on from what Helen said earlier, basically. Making mistakes is not the problem. It's absolutely fine to make a mistake. Just talk about it, communicate about it. It is important, I think, not the blame culture, but it's good to know where the problem came from originally, but to talk about it openly and share and not point fingers. It's the finger pointing that's the problem. Find out where it started from. Okay, so it was John that made this error. Brilliant. Now, what do we do about it? Let's all talk about it. How do we support John so John doesn't feel like he's about to get fired or kicked out? It's fine to know that he made it, as long as it's a supportive environment. So that's first thing for me. The second thing is that, and Andrew talks about this earlier, and it's good to hear that middle child are not one of the many that there are out there, because it is also a company culture thing. So that there are many companies out there, and I think we can probably all name a few of them, that don't have a culture where it is possible to necessarily own up or to confess or to protect each other. And that's certainly a pressure I feel quite a lot as someone who's fairly senior, that I take a lot of pressure on my shoulders to try to protect the people beneath me, but you can't always do that. And so I think that makes the fear even worse. And then you sort of walk away from a project feeling like that you did fuck it up, and it was all your fault, and that your reputation is absolutely shattered, and you've got nowhere to go because you don't have a support network at the company. You're a freelancer, and then you're out on your own, sitting, wallowing in your own discomfort, self-hatred, loathing. It's pretty dark when you get there.
Yeah. Yes, thank you for that. I think referencing is a big one though, isn't it, as well? Like, does anybody ever ask what their reference would be like by their employer before they leave? Because you go, don't you? Your contract finishes, you're off, you've got no idea what they're going to say about you, especially if there was a big drama. Cath, has that ever crossed your mind as a freelancer?
Yeah, definitely. I think we all obviously our reputation, Helen said it, didn't she? Our reputation is our currency. And yeah, you absolutely it's really nice to hear from people talking about companies where they want to create a good environment, but we all feel terrified, and you all feel yeah, you're only as good as your last job, or you're going to kind of be remembered for that one thing. Like Dan said, you have to remember the stuff that you've done well, but it's really hard, isn't it? That's not really the way our brains are wired. We remember the stuff we fucked up. We don't really sit and go, these are all these great things I did. So yeah, it definitely goes through my mind.
Person as well, and a modest person, I think it will probably play on your mind more than someone who tends to just want to forge ahead, and just like anyone in the wayside goes left and right. And
just about references, Kimberly, I think just to add again, I was thinking, I noticed it down earlier. I don't know if anyone has purposely avoided providing a referee for a previous job, but the previous job's still on their CV. Because when I look at a CV like that, I do think that's interesting that the last job they had, they've not provided a referee for that. So what would that reason be? And again, I'm only talking for myself, and I get that it's really, really tricky, and it's hard to admit to things sometimes and so forth. But certainly from my perspective, I would much rather someone was honest with me, because I get it, because I get problems happen all the time, and I would never, and I know how it's so unusual that either it's not just a simple mistake or it's one person's fault. I'd much rather someone said, well, on my last job, yeah, it was great and X, Y, Z, and I did so and so. Actually, in the end, it was really tricky because this happened, and then I'd get it, and I'd actually really respect that. And I know I can't talk for everyone, but I would never label someone as like, oh, they made a mistake on that last thing, or they were part of a mistake, probably more than likely, and therefore I'm writing them off. I'd be much more like, okay, that makes a lot of sense. But actually, when I see people that go, here's a referee from 4 jobs ago, I'm a little bit more inclined to think, do I know anyone at the company they recently worked for, and do I have to go and kind of get a reference because perhaps, there was something, much more serious afoot. And so I'm sure that everyone does it, but I definitely think honesty is the best policy.
Yeah.
Just to be clear, Andrew, sorry, just the thing is that people aren't going to leave references off because they will have had bad experiences.
Yeah.
So I think it's down to the employer to ask the question in the interview, not to assume because it's missing that means something. It's like, okay, so you left that reference off. There's probably a reason. What is it? Rather than looking at a CV and going, oh, well, they haven't put a reference down for the last 3 credits. That's a no. It's got to, you've got to get the chance to explain it.
Definitely. I think
when you're more, I'm going, sorry.
Go on, Cath, sorry.
No, it's just sometimes I think when you're more junior, you don't necessarily know if the person interviewing you is going to be friends with the person from the last, so it's an informal industry, right? And you can kind of say something about someone sometimes, they're like, oh, they were my best man. You're like, oh, sorry. But I kind of so I think it's hard, isn't it, in that situation?
Yeah, I think it's easier for established sort of directors of experience to be able to be honest about it. But I think junior staff, there is a real issue for them. They don't know who they're facing when they go to a next job. There's such fear that, and taking the blame for themselves. Unfortunately, the junior staff always think it must have been me because I was the inexperienced one. So I think you can't underestimate what a burden that is that junior staff carry. It's so much easier for us experienced ones because we've got an established reputation, and we can say, well, hang on a minute, you can talk. But for the junior ones, I think we have to take that on as a real thing, and people who are employing should be aware of that and be sensitive to ask the right questions.
I think
you also need to be fluid.
Go on, Helen.
So I was going to say, sometimes you just have to be a bit open-minded, because the last job could be a week, could be a couple of days.
Yeah.
So you can't go on with saying, well, red flags come up because there's not a reference from your last job. I don't always use a referee from my last job. If they ask for it, then fine, fair enough.
And
but I think sometimes you need to be a bit open-minded in terms of that, if you have that rigidity saying, well, you haven't got reference from your last job, it could be, for all types of reasons.
Also, the last job could be something that you've done it, you've delivered, but you're not necessarily proud of the way it worked out. And you may not always be in agreement with those execs and feel that, actually, I don't want this person to give me a ref because I don't respect them. So I think there's so many reasons as to why you may not put your last job. I mean, we've got fixated on the last job type thing, but I think it's just to be aware of the fact that there are so many issues as to why people are nervous about when they go to the next job. There's so many things that come into play, whether it's that you fucked up or whether it's that you've had a bad experience with someone who was either bullying or didn't take on your creative ideas on board. So you had a bit of a standoffishness. It's also a class thing. Some of you may be in there who think that, well, they're all those kind of posh people, and so they all know each other. I better not say anything. There's so many issues around, why people feel nervous about going forward to the next job and what that last job meant.
I think it's a cultural thing in TV that there is a little bit of sort of hiding facts and things. I think that, and I get why, and I totally understand why. I think, and I agree with David, it is on us really to be asking more questions about that. But I think we need to make sure the culture feels a bit more open for them to be able to be prepared to then be open and to have thought about it properly and not to sort of panic by it. I know that's difficult because I can't talk for everyone else, but certainly from my perspective, if I said, oh, tell me a little bit about your last job, there's not a referee there, it might be, well, I only did it for 2 weeks or it all fell apart, whatever, obviously. But if there was a problem there, if they feel a bit more open about being able to share the details of it, I think it's more productive in the long run, probably. But I totally accept that that's terrifying. But that is a cultural thing in the industry that, I don't know how we change that, but it would be better.
I think David is right, actually, in terms of culture. I think that sometimes that in terms of bad behavior, it is enabled from above, and there's not much that you can do about it. So you then, you then get into a situation where the blame game, the bullying and all that. And even if you are strong enough to say something and nothing is done, then it says more about the culture of that company rather than the individual. And I think we've all had our share of working at some real nightmare companies whereby the culture is just so goddamn toxic. But you feel that, when you're junior, is that you really can't go anywhere, because one, you're thinking of reputation, two, you're thinking of, what skills you can take on. And getting that reference, and three, you need to eat. So sometimes, you need to.
That's where it becomes impossible, though, isn't it? Because that's when I was talking about the bad mistakes and the good mistakes. In that environment, there's no difference between the two. Every mistake is a bad mistake, and you're going to end up coming out of it in a bad way, no matter what happens. And it doesn't matter whether you're junior, whether you're senior, whatever. If the support's not there, if the person at the top of that company breeds a culture that is about blame, is about finger pointing, is about hiding the truth sometimes. It's like, oh no, we can't tell him about this problem that we've got because he'll explode. But it's like, what is that? That's ridiculous. You can't communicate clearly about problems that are on the program, and that overspend or whatever it might be. Then there's no growth space. There's no chance for people to learn from mistakes. So it's a bigger question about what do you do about those companies other than avoid them like the plague.
Yeah. Well, exactly.
I think
blacklist them.
As a freelancer, I think what your message is still right, David. You've got to come out of a job like that, even if it was the most toxic company or whatever, and just think, okay, well, I've still learned something, which is don't go there. And
it's hard though, isn't it?
Yeah, it is hard. It is hard. But even in the most toxic environments, I think you can still take something out of that job that you've done, and you will still have learned something. But I agree with you. Culture change obviously needs to come from companies and the heads of companies.
But we've also got that hit list as well. I mean, I'm sure we've all got a little list in our heads of what company we would never work for again, ever.
Isn't that a sad thing?
Put it in the chat, Helen.
I interviewed someone yesterday.
We're talking about junior production members don't have that choice necessarily, do they? They need to.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, that's true.
Privilege.
And then they end up getting the ones that get completely broken and screwed over. And as I think it was Ruhi was saying earlier on, that when you get more experience, you've got more stuff to lean back on, and you can kind of pick yourself back up again. But when you're just a little baby in the industry, it's so easy for people to just completely crush your spirit.
Yeah, it's hard to remind yourself it's not about you when you're more junior, isn't it?
Yes, and that is why these very senior and brilliant people are here to share with you that that making mistakes is fine. And look, there's some brilliant comments in the Facebook message thingy too, and Solidarity saying thank you so much for all sharing like this, it's amazing. And Chelsea, thank you for your lovely message. I'm just trying to find it. She says she honestly can't tell us all how much hearing you discuss your experience helps. She's just starting out on the production management side, so Helen's going to be tapping you up shortly.
Good luck.
And the shit happens, but there's always a solution. Hearing that from you guys helps so much, so thank you, and we're glad to do that. And actually what I thought we would do now, because I can't believe we've already blathered on for like 35 minutes somehow, which is incredible, but shows how much there is to say on this very subject, is actually to talk specifically about things that have gone wrong and what you guys did or the help that you sought for it. So Ruhi, you already name checked something that you wanted to share with us. What was that?
Yeah, this is now, this was in 2005, so it's a while back. And so I was sort of early in my freelance, I'd left the BBC and I was out there. So just to give a background, a lot of the stuff I do is foreign filming. So I'm often sent to quite difficult locations, hostile environments, whatever, and I'm invariably out there on my own. So I'm having to carry everything. So I'll just give the example. I was filming after the tsunami in 2005 in Aceh, and I was embedded. I was making a film about a particular village that was sort of putting itself back together again. You know, the only thing left standing was a mosque. And then some people came back, and I thought, oh, this is great to just see how they will fare over the period of time. And I was filming over a long period of time. Anyway, in my sort of almost my first week there, I sussed out that they were going to get a very special visit by someone important. And it was basically Clinton and George Bush Sr. They were the special envoys that were sent out to sort out the tsunami issues. Anyway, I was there filming with my characters. You know, they were all lined up, and the helicopters came in, and then they landed, and George Bush and Clinton walked out, and I'm filming everything, and I cannot get over myself. I've got the opening sequence to my film, and I'm so excited about this. Anyway, I go back to the hotel. I immediately phone my exec back at the BBC, and I'm telling her, oh, you won't believe it. I got, you know, there was no other people around. I was the only one allowed.
I feel sick.
Did hit record.
The security had kept all of the BBC crew out, so I was the only BBC person in Lampuk at the time. And then they had their sort of the pool cameraman. You know, anyway, so I go back, I tell her, and she's like, yeah, she's like shouting it to everyone in the office, Ruhi got this amazing footage, blah, 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 right? Anyway, when I'm back at the hotel, one of the other BBC cameramen comes out, and I'm saying, look at this, DC, and I'm showing him the footage. Bear in mind, this is tape. This is the days of tape, right? So I show him the footage, and then we're both really excited, and he's just patting me on the back. Next day, I'm out there filming, and I'm filming a normal sequence, and I'm filming this guy. And I look at, you know, you look at your tape to see how much tape you've got left. And I'm thinking, what? 40 minutes? I shouldn't have 40 minutes. I'd forgotten to put a clean tape into the camera. And I had forgotten to forward wind my tape to park it. I went over my footage. And I was like, I sat there and I went hot and cold, hot. And I thought, oh my God, I didn't know what to do. Anyway, what I had to do was call Karen, my exec, and just say to her, listen, I fucked up. And I was in such a bad, and I was saying, Karen, I just know what I'm going to do. And I was like in a state. First of all, she told me to just calm down. She reminded me, which is really important, it's only telly, which made me think, I know, but that was the only stuff of my film. It doesn't matter what you say. And they said, okay, we're going to think about this. And what we did was we came up with solutions. And I said, actually, there was someone else filming there. She said, all right, find out who was filming there. Anyway, she got her researchers onto it. Next thing we know, within a day, I know that we've got footage that I can cover. And so my film, it went ahead because I had all my other footage with my contributors who were hanging around waiting before. But it was incredible that I went over the moment where they walked down and greet some of my contributors.
I've lived that with you. You told that really well.
That's such a good story, Ruhi.
Yeah.
I know. When Kimberly asked me, I said, well, I can't remember anything. And then I suddenly remembered it yesterday. I thought, oh my God, am I crazy? That was like the biggest.
But that's so funny because I bet there are people watching this who've, you know, taped over a sequence or not pressed record or whatever. And if you got round missing or over recording a sequence with Bill Clinton and George Bush, then, you know, I'm sure, you know, there's another solution.
Yeah.
It's never going to happen again. And also DC, the other BBC cameraman, he was trying to reassure me when I told him, he said, listen, we've all done it. We've all done it. And that is the point. Yeah. We've all done it. We all make mistakes. It's how we go forward. How do we solve it? And there is always a solution, creatively or physically, because there was somebody else filming that I got the footage. But otherwise, I'd have got around it creatively, I'm sure. You know, I'm sure all us directors know when we sit in that edit and we go on and on to our editor, oh my God, I didn't get that shot when he was walking through the tunnel. I've only got him coming out, and you get completely worked up. And the editor says, calm down, you know. We're going to make this work. We'll just cut it creatively. We'll jump cut that bit. You think, what? You mean it's all right to jump cut it? Of course it is, right? So there's always a solution, big or small.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. Wow. Dan, do you want to go next?
I've got one. I'll be brief. I'll tell you what the lesson that I learned from it was, is always call an important person for your shoot the night before, just to check they're still sentient. And basically, I was a production coordinator before I got into, editorial, and I was working on The Choir. And my job was to organise the travel for all the different choirs from all over the. This isn't as glamorous as your story, Ruhi, but it's about Wrexham basically, and I had to organise for all the choirs from all over the UK to travel for the final to North Wales, and I booked it all, and it was all fine. It was my first coordinator job, and it was one of my first sort of senior kind of jobs in tele. I was like, yeah, it'll be fine. And then the morning of the final, people started calling me and saying the coaches hadn't turned up. I tried to call the coach company. They weren't answering their phone, and everyone was freaking out. And basically it emerged that the coach company had gone into liquidation, and the owner hadn't told me and was just trying to ignore the problem. And so we took a moment to be like, okay, everything's really bad. My production manager and line producer were amazing. And we just said, okay, so how are we going to get all these people from these different places to Wales? So one of the choirs, we found out that they had a friend who owned a minibus, so we managed to beg the minibus off that guy. Another choir we got in a fleet of black cabs from Coventry. Another group, we implored them all to get on the next train, and we wired train tickets to them, and so on and so forth. And then we drove up to Wales, on the phone the whole time. And the whole time I just felt totally sick and like it was not going to work, but they all got there. And so the learning point there was, call if someone's important to your shoot, call them the night before to check their company hasn't gone into liquidation or whatever. And also know that if stuff is going wrong on the ground, there will always be a way around it. Like Ruhi says, there's always a solution to a problem.
Amazing. Oh, I can't imagine the stomach lurch there.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Right, who's the next victim? Cath, do you want to tell us about something?
Sure. It's actually quite hard to choose because I've fucked up. So I mean, I've like sat in endless car parks waiting for contribs that don't turn up. Got mistaken for a rough sleeper in Luton. Just like endless numbers of fuck ups. Recorded scenes without sound. But the one I thought was quite good. Is I produced the Louis Theroux Joe Exotic one that was out recently, and I'd wanted to work on Louis, and I got I'd wanted to work for Mindhouse, obviously nice new company and everything else. Had lots of chats for years about doing stuff, and then got the job, and I'd been at the company for what probably felt like about 5 minutes, but maybe it was more like a week. And we'd booked to go to Oklahoma to film for the Joe documentary. I just quickly made some more calls to the contributors we were hoping to film, and the prison where Joe was, and various things, and then kind of packed my bag, went home to pack to fly the next day. Got home that night, and there was an email in my inbox. It was to Miss Catherine Boggan and Mr. Louis Theroux. I was like, you are liable for tortious interference to the tune of millions of dollars for contacting contributors who are exclusively signed into a Netflix deal. So then I'd felt like I was about to bring Mindhouse down from the inside, that I'd just threatened us with tortious interference, and lost all of our contribs the day before the shoot. So we were all booked to fly, whatever, went to Oklahoma, and no, but to be honest, okay, quickly back, that night, that email came through, and obviously the first reaction is fuck. Anyway, because it had gone to me and Louis, I couldn't actually hide, which was actually really quite good. But we got out there, and we couldn't film any of the contributors, including Joe Exotic, who we had been, the whole thing had been commissioned about Joe Exotic. But the sort of what ended up happening, I suppose, the reason I wanted to bring it up as quite a good example, was that actually within that team, a really nice, really supportive, good company, it became part of the story. It became the legal letter that I got threatened with, actually even made it into the documentary, because it was it kind of helped to illustrate the sort of success the kind of financial success of Joe Exotic because he was worth this much money that we were being threatened in this way. And then it was like a really nice experience in the end of working in a team that like was like flexible and clever, and kind of like didn't make it out like, oh, how the fuck did you manage this, Cath? It was more like, okay, well, this is part of the story, we're going to make this, and this is the documentary now. And this was like the day of the shoot, you know. And it was like
That's great.
yeah. But anyway, there's lots of others that I just would total fuck up. So I thought
And it's great that you were supported, you know.
I thought I'd use one that was actually
good
positive.
Culture, that comes back round to the culture thing. Yeah, totally. No, I remember one of the biggest things I learned as a director was if it's related to, if it's not behind the scenes kind of staffing issue, which, you know, is another topic I guess we'll probably cover in a minute. If it's to do with the story that you're filming, or something goes wrong to do with the story that you're filming, quite often when it's wrong, it's right. I learned when it's wrong, it's right, or like cover it because it might end up being part of the story.
But it was it was a really good experience with that. Just like, oh, actually this isn't just like my fuck up, this is actually this is bigger than me. And I think like when you're more junior, you often feel like it's your fault, but actually I sort of increasingly realize, oh, it's bigger than me.
I'm just one small fish.
I'm nothing here, this is bigger than me.
Thank you for sharing that one, Cath. David, can I come to you? What would you like to share?
I haven't thought of a brilliant story, so I will do a couple of things. First, I'll add on to the end of Cath's story by saying something, adding on to what you just said, actually. If it's not on camera, it didn't happen, which means that often PDs will discover that the most amazing moment was completely missed. Not being in the rich position where Ruhi was, where she actually captured it and then managed to work it out, but it just didn't get it at all. But if it's not on camera, it didn't happen. Just think about how do you choose differently. If it's a story that's going to need to be told, find a different way to tell it. Just don't obsess about the fact that you weren't pressing record at the moment you needed to. There's always a way around it, which is what the fundamental thing we keep coming back to is. And then my story is just a silly one, really. My second job in TV, I was initially a runner on TFI Friday back in the original run, and then I got turned into the assistant floor manager, and my one job was to write cue cards, which basically involved copying exactly what was in the script onto a blackboard with a white pen. You can't really go wrong with that, can you? I mean, you have to be an idiot to get that wrong. So there I was with one of my cue cards, ready for the throat to break. Chris Evans turns to me, reads the cue card verbatim, which includes the name of Sheryl Crow's latest song. She's sitting in the chair opposite him. She then reacts by going, "That's not the name of my song. He's written that down wrong," on live television. Now, the interesting thing about that for me is that that company had quite a bad reputation from the outside about the way people got treated, and that Chris Evans was a monster to work with and all these kinds of things. And I just don't agree with that. I did not find that. I mean, it's like, I could see there were times when there was anger and they were shouting and it was unnecessary, but there wasn't a blame culture and there wasn't a culture of tearing people down. People would explode about things, but it was never about kind of making people feel pathetic and small or firing people for no reason. If people got fired, it was for a really good reason.
That's a good story. A live telly as well. Wow. Oh, cool. Helen, you've already shared one thing. I don't know if you have anything else you wanted to share based on some of these, but you mentioned sitting in a meeting and getting a budget line completely wrong.
I mentioned that one about the budget line, but I've got to say as well, from all the stories that I'm hearing, don't forget, I'm from the other side. We get the panic calls.
This has happened.
Exactly. We get the panic calls. We get the oh fucks. We get shit. We haven't got it. The camera's broken. We haven't recorded no sound. Oh my God, there's corruption of the cards. Oh God, we haven't got them backed up to a drive. So I get the other side of it. And we're the ones who sometimes got to come up with the solutions. And also as well, we've also got to try and calm them down. It's kind of like, you know, it's only telly. No one ain't died. It's not life and death. We're not doctors and nurses. You know, sometimes you just got to get them to bring it into perspective. And as you said, there's always a solution. And I think I've been doing this job so long now, it's kind of like, you know, you need to learn to think on your feet. And sometimes it's kind of like, okay, this is a solution. This is, you know, the best workaround that we can go. And sometimes, you know, I might not have this best solution, but sometimes you have to refer it up and just say, listen, this is what's happened. This is what we believe is the best solution, you know, and we can carry on from there. So as I said, from those stories I'm hearing, as I said, we hear it the other side as production management, we get the panic calls. You know, we've got to try and calm them down and say, you know what, don't worry about it. It's okay. As I said, you can plan for the best shoot in the world, but something completely comes left field. As Dan said with his PC job, you know, you thought that, you know, do diligence with a you know, a coach company. Didn't know he's going to go down the pan overnight. You know, God, I must have been, Jesus,
you know, you find them on Yelp, you don't think that's going to happen.
Seemed reputable. Yeah.
Yeah, I think to follow up on what Helen's just saying, the key is, I mean, especially for me, because I am in those kind of remote places on my own, is that thing about communicating back to the office. But also, it's a lot of it's about staying confident and in charge on the ground, making decisions. It's like, that's one thing, you know, I've been on all these hostile environment courses. The main thing that I took away from those hostile environment courses, and they were talking about if you get kidnapped, what do you do, right? But I take that. The thing is that you've got to just keep making decisions. There is no right or wrong decision, but you have to make a decision at that given moment to just move you forward. Otherwise, you get stuck, you get paralyzed. And so, you know, ultimately we are on the ground. And I've been in situations where there's a huge time difference. So I'm in such a remote area, I can't even get reception. Or, you know, I remember once I was in Mali in the middle of the desert and my camera stopped working. And when I was trying to get hold of my execs in London, it happened to be, or I don't know, some holiday, May Day or something. They were all on holiday. Nobody was around. And that was in the days of no mobile phones. So what do you do? So, you know, you're in a different time zone, whatever. And I just remember thinking, right, I've just got to and that's where, you know, our creativity, our resourcefulness, it's what we do, isn't it? It's why we've gone into this industry, because we are always dealing with problems. And it's about finding those solutions on the ground, on your own. But I think the key thing to always remember is just stay confident, stay in charge, and just keep making decisions. And out of all those 10 decisions, hopefully 6 of them will be the right decisions that get you out of that spot. So
that's really good advice.
Actually, let me circle back on, oh God, I hate that phrase. Why did I say that? Let me come back, go forward. Let me come back to a point that a couple of you have made, which is it's only telly, right? I don't know, like Andrew, how do you feel about that phrase?
You know how I feel about that. You know, when you mentioned it before, I've always thought it was quite, in my opinion, I always find that as unhelpful when someone said to me, it's only telly, because telly is watched by millions of people and we're putting people on telly that potentially have never been on telly before. And the impact on them is, you know, being in the limelight is massive. And that's quite a lot of responsibility. And actually, I find it's only telly is a bit of a motivator to keep me on my toes and to be really kind of careful about what we're doing. I think I prefer the sort of it's a drop in the ocean sense, because I think TV and everything moves on, but TV especially moves on. And what can feel like absolutely horrific in the moment and completely warranted, so it's hard to talk someone down from that point sometimes. It is a big drop. It's a small drop in the ocean of your career and definitely your life. And in 6 months' time, what felt like the end of the world is going to be largely forgotten, or you can look at it positively. And as David has said about learning lessons from small or big mistakes, like it can be turned into a positive, if anything. But what feels disastrous now, and I've got people still here that have worked on productions with us in the last couple of years that will probably honestly say, that moment was absolutely awful. We were really, really stressed. But now if I mention it, it will just be, you know, barely remembered. And I think reminding yourself of that is probably the most important thing. Certainly for me personally, the TV thing I find terrifying. But knowing that it's just a drop in the ocean and we will move on and everyone moves on and it's not as important as you think it is really important.
Come on, David.
So Ruhi made me realise that there is a third type of mistake that I didn't mention before, which is the one thing that we should be a bit more paranoid about, is that it's the kind of the health and safety, duty of care mistakes. Those are the ones that you should worry about, not the ones about recording over the tape, not the ones about forgetting to call people for the call time. The things that affect people materially that actually could threaten their lives. You know, it's the Alec Baldwin gun incident. These things they happen, and again, with the right support around you, you can recover from them. But those are the things you really should worry about trying not to make mistakes on. The rest of it is a drop in the ocean.
Well, that's if they listen. I mean, I had a couple of years ago, I was doing a doco and they wanted to do some drone shoots, and the best place we can do it with the open space was from the school. Drone operators were saying, oh, we need to get more height. And got a call from the AP on the ground, and she said, oh yeah, we just want to go on top of the roof of the school. I said, does it have an internal staircase where you can have, like, you know, go to the roof, it's got a door and everything? Oh no, we just get a ladder. I said, I don't think so. You know, get a ladder, and it's got a railing, that's fine, because that's safe, you know, and just get a ladder and just pop over. And I said, absolutely not. You know, that's just stupid. But also as well that, you know, they weren't thinking of it, because it's so, sometimes I always say, and it's no slight on them, is that sometimes editorial are very tunnel vision.
Yeah.
From a production point of view,
100%.
we have to be lateral. So we've got to see what's coming down the pipe, and we sometimes have to anticipate. So, you know, from a production point of view, we're not naysayers all the time. We just need to make sure that we've got to take on the health and safety as well.
Yeah.
So, you know, if we don't know what you've been doing on the ground, and then, as David said, you know, when you have something disastrous, that is squeaky bum time for us as well as editorial. Yeah. Because we don't know what you're doing, and we're having to rely on trust that you are sensible when you go out on a shoot. Yeah. You know, which is fundamentally important. You have to be sensible.
Yeah, that's true. I got pulled over for speeding, actually, Helen. I talked my way out of it.
You didn't do the
it was like a slow motion car
chase. That is resourceful.
It was in America, you know, where they do the like speed gun thing, and I like went past, and then he was following me. It was like a slow motion car chase, because I was like, I don't think he. So I'd like change lanes, and he'd like change lanes, and then I'd change lanes. And I was in the mirror. I was like, I don't know what to do, and he was like, go over. I pulled over, and he was like, ma'am, slow down. I was like, I'm terribly sorry, sir. Anyway,
please tell me he asked you if you knew how fast you were going.
Yeah, 88 and a 70.
Oh. Rachel from Friends moment. Did you have a name like Mr. Pretty or something?
Yeah, but I talked my way out of it. But Helen, you're right. I was busy thinking about story.
Well, you see, well, listen, I had one story where I had this director, God, I wanted to slap her, sorry. She went in the toilet and flushed the hire car keys down the toilet.
She was forgiven. Let's just be clear. She was forgiven, and everyone supported
it happened.
her.
You didn't get slapped. Yeah, Helen didn't
hang her up.
It was an inclusive, you know, healthy culture where there was no blame.
Not at that time. I'm thinking, what the fuck are you doing, and what do you want me to do about it?
Oh,
Helen. The thing is, it's probably now one of those things like Andrew's saying, that's a drop in the ocean now. She probably tells that story now, or at least I hope she does, in the pub and whatever, because, you know, but it's those, going back to that feeling that you've all described, and like Rue was describing right at the start, it's like at the time you have like squeaky bum time, you're like, oh my God, well, this is the worst thing anyone's ever done. But like Andrew's saying, it's like a drop in the ocean, isn't it? You need to be, there's a way to sort of tell yourself, okay, so we're just going to get through this and blah, blah, blah. I'm like a real sado, but I keep a notes thing on my phone of all the key disasters that have happened to me. I regularly look back on that and think, oh yeah, that was a bad one.
Bye, David. Thank you for coming.
Thanks, David.
Yeah. I just want to say that I think what a lot of this is sort of shows up is actually just what a stressful profession we're in. Ultimately, we do carry a lot of responsibility and burden. And like you were saying, Andrew, that it's, you know, saying it's just telly. The point is, it is telly, and we're carrying massive budgets that we've been, given the responsibility of. So I think that we cannot belittle. We're not saving lives. I always have to remind myself, I'm not saving lives. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a surgeon. However, I know if I'm on a BBC job, I feel so responsible about the licence fee. I really do. And I'm always very vigilant about that health and safety, so no disrepute will come to us, that you leave people behind in a safe position, so anything like that. I think, so it's not surprising that sometimes we do make mistakes, because it's so stressful on the ground. And I think we can never forget that we do carry a heck of a lot of responsibility on our shoulders with those cameras in our hands, so I think that's why I think the junior staff to realize that, yes, we never forget that when you're out there as well, you're in a really stressful position. And that's why I think, as you were saying, Andrew, that it's up to companies like yourselves. And I think the small companies are great. I think, the bigger companies I would question, and I never work for the really big companies, the sort of supermarket type companies, because there is less care. Because there's no human interaction. I'm sure, Helen, you and Andrew, when you send people out, these people, right? You've sat with them and had editorial meetings with them. You've discussed what the idea is, how we're going to make it great. So you have that, but the bigger companies just cannot keep sight of how many people they've got out there running around with cameras in their hands. And the stress they're under, and the fear of reporting that. So it's easy for me to say, get on the phone, ring your exec and say what the problem has been. I think for junior members, they probably like, I want to just hide under a stone, So I think we can't underestimate that.
Yeah, it's so important to send them off with that in their minds. And actually, I didn't really realize that we do that. When David mentioned about the most important things, duty of care and health and safety and whatever, that actually we sort of naturally put that into the minds of every crew we ever send out there, and every AP that's ever with them. It's like, first things first, make sure you're safe. And if you feel that you're not, then step away. I don't really care whether you lose a story. I often say that. I will often say, like, if we lose a story, I really don't care, as long as you guys are okay, or as long as the contributors are still happy, that they are safe as well. They're the important things. All the other stuff is completely fixable or not the end of the world. I think it's good actually for anyone listening when they've got this, as you were just saying, there's an awful lot of things to stress about in theory, but actually if you kind of just try to just worry about the few things that are definitely the most important things, the things I've just mentioned, and don't worry so much about the other stuff, because ultimately, we can get over those things, and they are those drops in the ocean. They really are. Deleting footage or whatever, every production. And maybe not someone's fault, it's technology or whatever. It's once you've seen that 100 times, it's so like water for ducks back. An issue with compliance or an issue with duty of care, that's completely different. I remember all of those, and they're serious, and we have to deal with them. So worry about those things, but you don't need to worry about the other stuff. The more you worry, the more mistakes you're going to make, frankly.
So true. Like, really, mine and Dan's friendship is slightly based on fuck-ups on productions, really. And actually it can be quite, like, obviously not the compliance stuff, I totally agree, Andrew, but the sort of, like, one time Dan and I went round about 8 times because we'd seen our contribs and they'd gone on to do a scene without us because they were police and there was access and they didn't want us to be there. And we saw them, and then we didn't want them to see that we'd seen them, and we didn't want it to be weird that we were nearby. So we just went round the same roundabout 8 times, to a point where we had to pull over because we were crying, laughing. So
yeah,
it was just like, actually, like, sometimes when you are just like you say, we were like on the ground with a camera, like, actually these can be quite like the fuck ups can actually be quite bonding, and it actually can be like really funny, and not compliance issues, but like these kind of,
that's the other thing I was going to say is talk as my biggest tip is talk to your friends in telly and the people around you about these things. The amount of times I said on the last call that we did, Kimberly, like, Cath and I have like other WhatsApp groups and whatever that we're in with all our mates, and the amount of times we'll just post on that group and be like, hello, I'm in Mali in the desert and my camera's not working. What do I do, friends? And the amount of times people will just be like, oh yeah, that happened to me. If you tried blah, blah, blah. Like the amount of times we put stuff out to our mates and just go, so I'm having the worst day in the world because blah, blah, blah.
Yeah. Or it's really common, I think, that feeling in between jobs where you've like, if you have finished a job that you don't feel went really well, and then you haven't yet got your next job, it feels like you're never going to work again, or all that sort of stuff, isn't it? Whereas like, I think those WhatsApp groups, if we say that in there, then within minutes, like someone's like, oh, I've heard of these people need someone, blah, 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 you should come and work. Like, and it's like,
Exactly.
Yeah.
I know.
Whereas you might have been internalizing that for 2 weeks, going, "Oh my God, you know, I'm unemployable." Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, we all feel it. But
I know that'll be really comforting to many. And we've got to wrap up, I'm afraid. Thank you everyone for commenting. Danny Carpenen has said hi, and what a great lineup. And Kate Walmsley said thank you for sharing.
Oh, we love Danny.
Oh.
And yeah, Tammy Snow, thank you for your comment. She was sharing some advice she had from a director and cameraman in Inverness, where they said, 1, it won't be the first or last time you mess up, and 2, it's not your money that you're spending. Oh, Helen, so don't take it personally. And I thought this was top tip advice. It made me feel so much better. And I don't think she means by that spend, you know, left, right and centre. She just means it is quite hard to separate yourself, isn't it, from actually it's a business and you're taking care of their money. It's not you personally. Yeah, completely. So thank you for that. Everyone is saying great session. Thank you, Michaela, for that comment as well. I've just jotted some things down, some like actual tips and things that you've said that are really tangible. So there's the keeping a note of your mistakes. I really like that. That was a good shout. Actually write it down, refer back, and you may, I guess, laugh at it or go, oh yeah, that was bad, but I know what I learned from that. Sharing that, I think above all, everyone has said, talk to your bosses, talk to your peers, share stuff, try and laugh about it, if not ask for advice. And you know that there is always a solution. You are not alone, and I think that is the biggest thing here. You know, the freelancer fear of owning up and being on your own and being the only person to have made that mistake is absolutely not true, and these people are proof of that. And that hopefully, you know, companies more and more so are understanding that culture more than ever, especially after the pandemic, is super important. And actually it's the second thing candidates of ours ask us actually. One is, oh, tell us about the job that you've contacted us about. 2, is it a nice place to work?
Right.
So, and I love that. That's a brilliant thing. And the companies that we work with, we really suss out who means what they say. And all
I think it's
really
important. Can I say it's important to note that even though you might be a freelancer working for an independent house, I always think that as a candidate, we also have the choice as well. If you ain't getting the vibe of that place, don't go there. You know, if your instincts are telling you, and sometimes you talk to your mates, it's kind of like, you know what, be wary of that company, be wary of that company. You know, despite how big it is, we are a bit of a cottage industry, and word gets around about bad companies as well.
Yeah. So listen to your gut and take appropriate action. I should also name check that some support actually, the film and TV charity, which I don't think enough people know about actually. Lots of people have said to me, what is that? What's their website? They're amazing. They have free support lines where you can be anonymous or you can ask anything in terms of mental health, even contractual stuff, as well as Beck2, obviously, is a good place to go. But the film and TV charity.org.uk is where to look for that. And then obviously the TV Mindset, Adil and co, they have great resources on their website, things like Samaritans, The Mind, Calm, Shout, which I think is a great idea. Shout is a text service for people who don't feel like talking about it, and that's giveusashout.org. So again, I guess if you were on a shoot or didn't feel you could ring, there's lots of places to go. So yeah, that leaves me to thank you all so much. Thank you, David, who's disappeared, Dan, Andrew, Helen, Ruhi, Cath, you've been amazing. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If anyone missed the beginning of this, it will be going on our website later on today, and as well as all the other previous sessions. So lovely to see you all, and hope to see you again soon.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.